Thank you, thank you. Hey guys, Sly here, and welcome back to another episode of the Caspian Game Awards. And well, tonight is a very special episode because we are finally covering the really good years. We've been through a lot of not very good years, I'd say, in at the very beginning of this series. But I am proud to say that we are finally reaching the era that is basically my childhood. I mean, we kind of already did that with a few of the years we've talked about, but even more so as we are going to be talking about the legendary, magnificent year that was 2007. So, let's just say that I am very excited about this particular year to talk about because, well, I know I feel like I've said this a couple times, but may I assure you guys, this is definitely going to be one of the best years we'll be covering in this entire show. Dare I say, thus far, it's actually going to be the best year that we're going to be talking about as far as video games are concerned. And, well, it was admittedly kind of close, because 2010 was also a really damn good year in hindsight as far as video games are concerned, but ultimately I do think that 2007 just has the edge, mainly just because a lot of the games that, came from 2007, obviously a lot of those games walked so that a bunch of the other games could run in 2010 or even 2013 and hell even 2016 as far as I'm concerned. Like, that's just how damn good of a year 2007 was. And so yes, that does mean that as of right now, 2007 is the best year we're going to be talking about thus far. I mean, hell, I even got prepared in the background with a bunch of, not just games, but albums that were released that year. I mean, yeah, let me just move the mic a little bit. So yeah, we've got ourselves a bunch of the games that we will be talking about. It should not be a spoiler that we're going to be bringing up some of these games. We've got Assassin's Creed right there, Call of Duty 4, Ratchet and Clank Tools of Destruction, Super Mario Galaxy, Metroid Prime 3, Halo 3, Ace Combat 6, and then got Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2 back there just for representation's sake. But also, this was a really damn good year as far as music is concerned. Yeah, I mean, just look, we got Cohen Cambria's Good Apollo 2, Silverstein's Arrival Departments, Data Remembers, For Those Who Have Heart, Paramore's Riot, and yeah, so on and so forth. And of course, for the occasion, I got my Infinity on High shirt, and I even got the album right there. You guys know I love Fall Out Boy, and I do love me some, old school Fall Out Boy. Infinity on High, definitely a pretty damn good album. I remember the day that dropped. Like, it's insane just kind of thinking about it. But of course, we're not here to talk about music as much as I would like to talk about the music of that year. We're here to talk about the games. And, well, like I said, basically night and day in comparison to 2008. Not that 2008 was, like, the worst year ever, but, like, as far as the games were concerned, and admittedly even a lot of the music and TV shows, yeah, no, night and day, ladies and gentlemen. Night and freaking day. We went from one of the worst years to one of the best years, which I guess is just kind of reflective of just how damn good of a year 2007 was, that we're even just kind of talking about it in this light. So I'm really excited to get into this for you guys. Of course, for those who are new to the series, just as a bit of a refresher, this is basically us redoing the Game Awards. Although we are getting pretty close to the end of, like, when the Game Awards actually was happening. We've only got, like, 5 years left as far as I'm concerned, including this year. But rest assured, I do have a few ideas about after that, but I'll get into that once we get to 2003. But rest assured, 2007 was a pretty good year as far as, music and video games. TV shows I'd still think were okay around that time. though that doesn't necessarily mean the Game Awards were good. As a matter of fact, I think I mentioned this plenty of times. The more and more we go on, the more and more cringe it gets. And oh my god, I think it's unavoidable to talk about the cringy aspects of the Game Awards at this point. I'm gonna have to address some of the absolute cringe I had to watch. It was bad. Like, I usually don't do it for this series. I mostly just try to focus on what awards they did give out and pretty much just talk about exactly what I would have chosen instead. But I think I have to talk about the cringe. So, yeah, it's gonna be pretty bad. But of course, as far as I'm concerned, let's get into the actual awards that we will be passing out tonight. Unfortunately, there was one major issue, and this was the same thing with 2010. So that's not necessarily like a knock to this year, but unfortunately, there weren't really a lot of like new studios that were popping up. Like, I found a few, but not enough to unfortunately justify me putting that as a category that we'll be having tonight. So it's like, yeah, I sincerely apologize for that. I tried looking up games, and like, there were a lot of amazing games. Downright, dare I say, like some of the best games of all time that were being made around this time. And I found a lot of examples from a lot of veteran studios, but a lot of newer IPs that were coming around, yeah, they were made by veteran studios. They weren't made by new kids on the block this year, which is a bit of a shame, but there are a few that I will be giving a shout out anyways, so it's not all doom and gloom. But as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I'm pretty excited to get into this. So also, I apologize if I keep messing with my lip. I've had like a bit of a mouth sore issue the past couple days. It's been kind of killing me. So I think I'm gonna have to reapply some stuff. So I'll go over the rules and then I'll get that done if that's okay with you guys. I just want to make sure I'm able to like talk throughout the entire time without it being a problem. Because admittedly, it's kind of, I feel the pressure right there. But anyways, so of course, as always, we're to go over the rules as far as I'm concerned for this particular list. So, of course, as you guys should know by now, the game had, like, we are only going to be talking about games that released within that entire time frame from January 1st to December 31st. We are not the Grammys, nor do we want to be the Grammys.
Don't yell at me, yell at the Grammys.
We're not weird. We're not doing weird bullshit cutoff dates like that. We do the entire year because it's only fair, and well, it's fair in that we get representation for a game that released said year, and that includes international releases. Because as far as I'm concerned, there were quite a few games that were nominated in the 2008 and even the 2009 list that actually came out in 2007 in Japan and or in other places. I want to go with the original release. And so we'll be doing that. Rule number 2, no early access games. Though this is going to become a less of an issue as it goes on, because I feel like the early access was actually a new thing around 2007. Like, there weren't really a lot of games that were doing like a bunch of beta or alpha tests, publicly speaking, around this time. And so I might end up getting rid of that rule as we go deeper into the 2000s. But I'm still going to keep it on here as a precautionary. Rule number 3, as far as DLCs / expansions, only games that had expansions that the said games did not release that year will be applied. Meaning, if a game came out in 2007, we're not going to nominate any DLC or expansion for that game, because it's only fair for us to talk about games that had expansions like a year or so after they released. So, yeah, it will make sense once we get to that category. And then, of course, rule number 4, for Game of the Year to be a nominee, they have to be basically just generally liked games by a lot of people, and they have to be a completely new game. So no remakes or remasters, which there's going to be one game that came out in 2007 that people are going to be very upset that I'm not nominating, because everyone and their mother loves this game, but it'll be an honorable mention. We'll get to it at the end of the stream. And then last but not least, because I'm biased and I don't care because it's my show, only games that I will be interested in will be chosen. If I don't care about the game, it's not going to be on here. So, yeah. And if you disagree with me, that is completely fine. Of course, let me know in the chat, or if you watch the re-upload of this on YouTube, go check that out. But either way, before we get into this, I'll be right back. I'm going to try to apply that numbing stuff on my lip. So, yeah, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry, it's just, again, that's been a problem with me for like the past several days. I think it's because I've been eating a lot of I've been putting a lot of like sauces on my meals as of late, and so because of that, I think that's causing the thing in here. So it has gotten better. As a matter of fact, like, it's definitely a lot clearer than it was earlier. It's just something that's been bugging me, how it even affected the Quake stream the other day. But anyways, yeah, sorry. So yeah, let's of course get into this magical year. Of course, I have the envelope right here as always. So let's get into this. And let's get into the action adventure category. So, obviously, this is the category in which we're just going to be talking about just general games as a whole, not necessarily one game in particular. But actually, you know what? I just realized something. I'm going to change something up just real quick before I announce it, because I think I changed my mind on the winner, because let's just say the original winner that I ended up choosing, I've been giving them a lot of love, and I feel like there's one game that like I feel like is just the correct answer, and so I'm gonna change it real quick. But you get the oh wait, I can't. Shit, I just realized. Okay, never mind. I forgot. Okay, it can't even qualify for this category. God damn it. Okay, I'm sorry. False alarm. Because I remembered the game that I was trying to nominate. Yeah, but anyways. So, as far as action adventure games are concerned, yeah, this was still a pretty good year for action adventures, though there is one particular category that this year was definitely known for. We'll get to it when we get to it, but as far as I'm concerned, action adventures were pretty good. But of course, as I alluded to earlier, this of course was the year of 2007. We're 5 years into the Game Awards. Did they change anything? Well, not particularly. Now, don't get it twisted. I do think that all of these games are very good games to choose as far as, nominees to win as far as the Game Awards is concerned. But I don't like how this includes 2 platformers into the mix. So, Ratchet & Clank Future Tools of Destruction, which of course I have right there, along with Super Mario Galaxy, also right there. I do think those are genuinely pretty good games. Funny enough, Tools of Destruction, I remember I played this way after it came out, like at least 12 years after it came out, so like literally 5 years ago. And I will admit, I did kind of have to get used to it because I'm more used to the old school, like PS2 era Ratchet & Clank games. This was just not my particular era for Ratchet & Clank. Not that it's a bad era, it's just something I had to get used to, especially since they kind of toned down some of the maturity of the previous games. And I remember hearing, like, looking up a bunch of reviews, and people were giving this a lot of flack because of that. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it is representative of where the series would go. And so you can definitely debate whether or not, it's a good or bad game. But either way, because it leaned more heavily into the platforming, I feel like it fits more within the best platformer category as opposed to best action adventure. It would still qualify as an action adventure game, but I feel like that's a better category to have it. And well, Super Mario Galaxy, same exact reason. This game was huge back in 2007. Like, as far as I'm concerned, this is definitely one of the games that people think of whenever they think of that year. And for good reason. A lot of people liked the being able to walk around like spheroids, even though Ratchet and Clank did that 4 years before, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. And even just besides that, Super Mario Galaxy had a lot of cool new features that were unique to this game that weren't in previous Super Mario games. And just kind of getting itself back together after Sunshine wasn't particularly the most fondly remembered Super Mario game. So good games, but I wouldn't personally have them on here. Now that being said, though, God of War 2 and Assassin's Creed 1 absolutely do deserve to be on here. Granted, God of War 2 is a bit of a weird one because that came out on the PlayStation 2 in 2007, which there were still a lot of games in 2007 that were being made for the PlayStation 2. Typically, that's what happens, after 2 years, the new console generation comes out, there's still games that are being made for the previous generation. And so this game was no different than that. Though considering that this was like a major IP for Sony, it's definitely weird to think about. And at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure this is like a lot of people's like least favorite God of War game. Not that it's a bad game, but like it does kind of have, sequel syndrome. But rest assured, it is still a pretty good game. And I definitely do see why it did get nominated, but yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of an odd choice to, have it on the PS2. And then of course we got Assassin's Creed 1, which, hey, again, you see my boy right there. I remember whenever we streamed this 2 years ago, like I kept joking about this being a Sly Cooper ripoff, which in some instances, yes, it did take elements from Sly Cooper. It also took elements from Prince of Persia because this was supposed to be a Prince of Persia game that got turned into its own thing, and so it just took a lot of elements from a lot of those like mid 2000s action adventure games, and I wouldn't necessarily say it reinvented the wheel, but it definitely did make it to where it stood out in comparison to even those games and many other games that would come out later on. As far as its sort of, historical fiction that it uses, and just the open worlds that they have for like Damascus, Jerusalem, and Acre, I find to be pretty interesting to explore. Hell, I was exploring it earlier last week, just kind of doing personal research, not just for this, but for my Minecraft world that I was working on for you guys like a while back. And so I can definitely understand why they ended up, having it nominated. So, now that being said, Super Mario Galaxy was the game that ended up winning this particular category, but as I mentioned, I don't necessarily think this is the best category for it. I'd rather it be in a separate platformer category. So, what would I end up choosing instead? Well, so yeah, obviously I'm going to keep God of War 2 and Assassin's Creed 1 on here, but I'm also going to give a shout out to Crackdown, Ace Attorney, Apollo Justice, and Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. So Crackdown was another open world game that got a bit of attention around this time. As a matter of fact, this was kind of, I guess, the precursor to games such as Prototype and Infamous, I would say. It was a bit more on, the exaggerated superhero type. How it even had like a cell shaded look to it. And yeah, no, I can definitely see why this is a cult classic. It's got issues, like, you can definitely argue that it has a bit of a repetitive open world design. But I would argue that as far as Xbox exclusives at the time, Crackdown definitely stood out in comparison to other Xbox exclusives. And you can definitely have a bit of a fun time, especially since this game was a bit more on the goofier side, I would say, as far as like, open world games from around that era. So I wanted to give that a shout out, but I also wanted to give a shout out to both of these two games, because 2007, if you were a Nintendo DS player, or hell, I'll even say this, if you were a PSP player as well, like basically just handheld gamer, 2007 was definitely your year. And as far as like, the DS is concerned, Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney, I have names swapped because I don't know, I just don't like having the thing after. But anyways, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm not mistaken, this is another game that isn't necessarily like a fan favorite for Ace Attorney. And this was the first game to not have Phoenix Wright as the main, character. But as far as visual adventure novel games are concerned, I still think this game stands on its own and helped bring a new generation of Ace Attorney fans into the franchise. And also, of course, since it's, the typical Ace Attorney, sort of puzzle thing going on there, I do think that it helps as far as, its more narrative beats, especially since, Ace Attorney, I think, was definitely starting to lean into more story by this point. And then last but not least, we've got Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass, which this game sort of took the look of Wind Waker, which, yeah, was controversial when it first came out, but by this point, people were starting to warm up to it. Basically applied it into its more 2D Zelda format. And as far as using the DS's features, I think this was definitely a game that tried to utilize it in the best ways possible. Granted, for people who want to actually play the game, it might be a bit difficult. I mean, that just kind of happens with Nintendo games in general. But I would definitely I would definitely give it a recommendation, especially for those who want a bit more of a more relaxed Zelda experience. Especially since this one is a bit more, since it's on handheld, it's a bit more easier to get into in comparison to something like Twilight Princess, which came out, several months prior. But yeah, so definitely two games that I would recommend if you are someone who wanted to get into handheld gaming. But of course, we got some pretty decent choices, but there can only be one winner. So, of course, we've got ourselves the envelope. I tried changing the winner on, this particular thing, but I think ultimately what I ended up choosing, you'll see. But let's get into the winner. So, the award for the best game, action-adventure game of 2007 goes to Assassin's Creed. I know, I've been nominating Assassin's Creed a lot as of late, and they've won plenty of awards, but I will fully admit, part of that is because I do genuinely really like the older Assassin's Creed games. And I will just be truthful as well. I do think that Assassin's Creed 1, even though it has aged in some areas, it aged better than people would really think about it. I really do like the building blocks of this, because again, it took elements from a lot of other franchises that I liked, and it just kind of made it its own. Slap that historical fiction and that science fiction mixed together, and also just sort of establishing sort of the ground, like the basis for the Templars and the Assassin's Brotherhood. And you've got yourself a pretty compelling, game that basically kind of... Okay, I want to preface this right now. I'm someone who despises conspiracy theories. I think that, a lot of them are pretty dumb, and I do think that, a lot of them end up doing more harm than good. That being said, though, as far as a game that is basically just one giant conspiracy theory, because let's be real here, the Templars are basically the equivalent of, the Illuminati in this series, in this franchise. And, the Brotherhood are just essentially, the anti-Illuminati. And so, as far as a game that tries to tread around stuff like that, I don't want to say lightly, but just kind of is more self-aware about the fact that yeah, it's a pretty dumb concept. I can at least appreciate that sort of, what if. It's not alternate history, it's still, it's more historical fiction, but at the end of the day, I would definitely still recommend the game, even just kind of despite some of those things, like I said, that haven't particularly aged all that great. I mean, even if you don't particularly care for the story, you can't deny that, Damascus and Jerusalem are such beautiful cities to walk around in. I will fully say that, as far as Middle Eastern architecture is concerned, those are some of the most impressively recreated cities just ever. It's really awesome to, check those out. And, well, it's helped by the fact that this game had a bit of a unique combat system for its time. It's a bit more just kind of... I know some people don't particularly care for it, but I think it kind of fits in the context of what they wanted to do with it, where you pretty much just have to, basically dodge and block. And even just kind of stuff besides that, it's just cool to use the throwing knives and the wrist blades. Those are pretty fun to use. So yeah, no, Assassin's Creed, don't worry, since this is the first game, this is going to be the last time we'll be talking about Assassin's Creed. So don't you worry. I just really like the gameplay still. But of course, speaking of gameplay, let's move to the platformer category, which was not a category at the original Game Awards, which sucks because, again, platformers were definitely on the decline around this time, but I still think that it is worth giving them a bit of a nod. So it should not surprise you that, of course, I've got Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction and Super Mario Galaxy on here, but I've also was able to find a few games that genuinely surprised me that, were from this year, and even a game that you guys are going to be surprised I'm going to nominate here. Yeah, I did that. That right there, that's my work. I totally worked on this. But anyways, so let's start off with the games that, okay, so obviously, what I said about Ratchet & Clank Tools Destruction and Super Mario Galaxy basically applies here. I think Tools Destruction being a continuation of the older Ratchet & Clank games is fair. I do have my issues with it, but at the end of the day, it's again, it's more of an entry for a new generation of fans. Fair enough. And then Super Mario Galaxy, of course, just kind of the new features that this game added, as well as it just kind of revigorating Mario as an IP, definitely helped out things a lot, because people forget, but the GameCube era was not a particularly great time for Nintendo. Hell, even the N64, as much as people praise N64 games, it really didn't sell that well in comparison to PlayStation's 1 or 2. So, yeah, Nintendo was struggling until they released the Wii. And because of that, well, it was brought back. So, but besides Mario, I did want to also give a bit of a shout out to a few of the other DS games. Again, this was a big year if you were a DS player. And as far as Mega Man ZX Advent and DK Jungle Climber is concerned, I think these are more than fair choices. Keep in mind, both of those franchises weren't particularly in their prime, but they were definitely, I would argue, spots that would eventually, people would see as being a sign of what was to come. Because obviously, this came out, as far as Mega Man ZX Advent, this came out before Mega Man's 9 and 10, and DK Jungle Climber, of course, came out before Donkey Kong Country Returns, which all those games are considered to be basically revitalizations for their respective franchises. But as far as both of these games are concerned, I would argue that they kind of helped in sort of allowing those games to blossom. Because with Mega Man ZX, this is the sequel to Mega Man ZX, which came out the year prior. And yeah, it focused more on this new character here. And again, it's not a game that I would say did anything particularly groundbreaking for Mega Man. It basically just took the formula of the Mega Man Zero games that were on the Game Boy Advance and basically just kind of continued that legacy onto the DS. And in that aspect, I can respect it. And with DK Jungle Climber, this was a bit more of not really a return to form, because I would say that Donkey Kong Country Returns was more of a return to form for Donkey Kong as an IP, but this game was definitely more of an homage to the older games. And in that respect, I think that's worthy enough as far as giving it a nominee. And then we've got the elephant in the room, Portal. So I was debating on whether or not I wanted to actually put it as a platformer, because I didn't know if it counted, because I see it as more of a puzzle game. It's a first-person puzzle game where you try to go through different things. But then I kind of thought about it. It's like, I mean, there are segments segments that do involve a lot of like, going between platforms between point A and point B. It's not like a game like Assassin's Creed or Uncharted or even Sly Cooper, where it's like some people might label them as platformers mainly just because they have those elements, but I personally don't consider them that at all because, again, context matters. This game has at least a few more elements to where I feel like it justifies, but rest assured, Portal is a really damn good game. Dare I say, it's definitely one of Valve's best games for sure. And yeah, no, as far as like, establishing a new IP around this time, yeah, Portal like was pretty fun. And again, this is another game that I streamed back in I think it was 2020 if I'm not mistaken. Same, yeah, oh yeah, because I streamed it the same year as Portal 2. So yeah, and I have the VOD saved, so if you guys want to check out the VOD, feel free to do so. I'll remember how laggy it was, but you can definitely check out Portal if you want. So yeah, but you get my point. Portal, I do think, is a pretty phenomenal game, and I would recommend it. So yeah, but yeah, let's be real here, though. The real competition is between these last three over here. So let's just see which one wins. Some of you guys might be surprised. So here we go. So the award for the best platform game of 2007 goes to Super Mario Galaxy. Longtime viewers are shocked. Longtime viewers are definitely shocked about this decision. But rest assured, I do think that this game it honestly is pretty close between this and Portal, but I do think that because of my hesitation with Portal, I think this is probably the correct choice. And well, that makes sense. I mean, this game basically, well, for lack of a better term, took the series to the stars because you had your Super Mario Brothers games, Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3. You had Super Mario World, and then we took things back a little bit, and we had Super Mario 64, and then we had Super Mario Sunshine with more of a vacation setting. So where do you go next? You go up into space. And as far as using that, as a basis for the gameplay, I think it works out pretty well because of the fact that it does take advantage of the fact that you are, basically in orbit around planets and doing a bunch of challenges and levels in between, a bunch of areas in this 3D environment. It allows for so much just freedom of just movement that you don't see with many other Mario games. Even in comparison to something like a Super Mario 64 or a Super Mario Sunshine, like it basically just evolved those concepts and just went all out with all the the more open level design. And it helps when it comes to trying to gather all of the I think they're called star rights, or is that a different phrase? I don't remember what the stars are called. But as far as trying to find a bunch of collectibles, this game has that covered for you. And as far I keep saying as far as, I apologize. But what also is pretty much a good addition are the new movesets that Mario has, including a more refined spin attack, and just generally taking advantage of the fact that, well, this is a Wii game, which, oh shoot, the controller is back. Why the hell is the Wii controller back there? The fuck? Well, all three of the consoles from that generation's controllers are back here. Wow, I need to take care of my shit better, but yeah, it basically took advantage of just, the controls that we have here, as well as the motion controls. Because keep in mind, this is a Wii game. And I think this is definitely one of the best examples of a Mario game that utilizes this, the controller of the console that it comes from. And so because of that, I think that, this is probably the best choice as far as platformer games are concerned, especially considering my hesitation, like I said, with Portal and just my initial experience with Ratchet and Clank. So yeah, Nintendo wins this round. So, but well, jokes are on us, because even though we won with platformers, we're gonna lose when talking about role-playing games. Okay, remember when I said earlier about, how I am gonna have to talk about this year's Game Awards? Oh my god, the way that they announced the winner for this was actually the most uncomfortable shit I've ever seen. How there wasn't any sort of sex offense trials, I will never know. I know it was a different time, but I don't even know if I want to say it. I don't even know if I want to say it because of TOS. But let's just say that it basically involved borderline nudity on public television. Again, keep in mind, this is the Spike Game Awards we're talking about. And, they're just blatant misogyny that they did back in the day. It's not surprising, but it's man, as much as I love shit from the 2000s, there are just some things that I'm so glad we've moved past. So, because that's actually kind of cringy with what they did. Just go look up how they just look up it for yourselves. 16 plus, by the way. I'm not gonna encourage teenagers to fucking go after it. I swear to God, it actually made me cringe. So, hold on. Let me see if I can find a separate thing for it. Again, I know I don't usually talk about the Spike Game Awards, or I just don't talk about the Game Awards directly. But yeah, this was so bad. God. Oh shoot, wait, can you guys hear that? Shoot, hold on. Yeah, I don't want to get copyrighted. Oh wait, no, you guys can't. Okay. Oh yeah, it also didn't help that they had a bunch of people who didn't. Okay, Foo Fighters is in there. Okay, that's cool. Hold on. Stan Lee. Yeah. Okay, fuck that. Okay. Okay. I forgot Kid Rock was on there. Anything Kid Rock related is automatically on my cringe list. I didn't even need to fucking watch the section. Knowing that Kid Rock was on there was fucking cringe enough. Let's move on. Okay. Role-playing games. What did they nominate? They nominated a remake, and they nominated a game that came out in 2006. So, Yeah, no. So automatically not very good list. Also, Eternal. So yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics. That is a remake of a game from 1997. Um, and so yeah, it automatically doesn't count. And well, Persona 3, as highly respected as Persona 3 is, as far as Persona games are concerned, it came out in 2006 in Japan. So it doesn't count for this list. And Eternal Sonata. Okay. If that's your thing, that is completely fine. It just isn't really my thing personally. Again, like, I'm more into just more traditional high fantasy RPGs, like a Final Fantasy. And so to have a game that's a bit more just kind of more grounded fantasy is just not particularly my thing. So yeah, I'm trying to go through this as fast as I can, by the way. I cringed. I'm sorry, that Kid Rock thing actually made me fucking die of cringe. So it's like, I want to move on. But anyways, as far as the final game for what they nominated, Mass Effect 1 makes the most sense. Because Mass Effect 1 is, in fact, a pretty damn good game. And surprisingly enough, I think this was actually BioWare's first new IP. This wasn't their first game, but this was the first like IP that they tried to showcase that they could actually like, make pretty solid games with. And so yeah, like I would definitely say that Mass Effect is definitely the choice that I would go with on this list, which the Game Awards did agree with me. It's just the problem is that they used women's parts to showcase it as the winner. Just, I swear to God, I'm cringing deep down in my heart. So let's make this let's cringe and let's present a better list of games that should be on here. And I don't think anyone's going to disagree. Yes, we have another Mario game on here, and yes, this is a game that is pretty contentious, but funny enough, I actually thought this game was decent. And yes, I actually did play this. The original Wii that we had, this was one of the games that we had. Granted, that was a long ass time ago, and we got rid of that, and well, because of that, I don't own this game anymore. But as far as a RPG spinoff of the Mario games are concerned, this game was pretty cool. It was a sequel, I think, to the original Paper Mario that was on the GameCube, if I'm not mistaken. And so it just continued off of that story. And, well, hot take, I actually kind of liked how they tried to introduce a new villain that wasn't automatically Bowser. Because that is one thing that, like, I've always had an issue with Mario, is that like they just kind of made Bowser the default antagonist for every single game. Yeah, that he is an iconic villain for Mario. That's fine. I'm not against people using him ever. Just don't overuse him. Have like new antagonists for Mario to go after. Oh, make fucking Wario and Waluigi like more antagonistic roles. That'd be fine. So I think his name's not Mysterio, but I don't know. I just like that aspect, and also the fact that you can actually sort of like, flip the camera to specific positions that benefit you, I thought was a pretty cool mechanic. And so this game, I feel like as far as Mario RPGs are concerned, it was actually pretty innovative, or just RPGs in general. So good on them. And then we've got another pretty big game that came out this year. The Witcher. Yes, the original Witcher came out in 2007. It's kind of weird to think about because, granted, most people when they think of The Witcher, they think of The Witcher 3, which, fair enough. But this was CD Projekt's first game, which is insane to think about. And this game is, at least in many people's minds, is considered to be the weakest Witcher game. But I would still even argue that even for a game that came out in 2007, it was pretty impressive for what it was. Yeah, I had some of that what's called Eurojank in it. Basically, there's some weird I don't want to say Bethesda level glitches, but like pretty noticeable glitches that happen in the game. But I would say that that doesn't really take away from the experience. I can still be pretty immersed in a game like this, even if it's not like an open world RPG. I still find it to be a game that can hold on its own and laid the groundwork for what was to come. Especially since like the combat system, I was actually more impressed with the combat system in this game than Oblivion, which came out a year prior. So, but yeah, Witcher came out this year, and yeah, no, it's Witcher gameplay. It's pretty fun. And then we've got this here for The World Ends With You. This was nominated in the 2008 Game Awards, but it was a game that came out in 2007 in Japan, and so naturally we're gonna have it here. Also, again, another DS game. I cannot emphasize enough just how damn good this year was for DS players. As far as a more urban RPG is concerned, taking some inspiration, funny enough, from Persona, but also from other franchises. I thought it was a cool, unique experiment that they did, even if it wasn't like something that was entirely mainstream. I can at least commend, them going for a more grounded feeling, in air quotes, a bit more just kind of relatable. So that's kind of how I feel about it. And then we've got Lost Odyssey, which was another Xbox 360 exclusive that came out back in the day. I think this was developed by the same guys who made, was it Shadow, like the older Shadowrun games? Let me double check. I could be wrong. Free Plus. No, but they did help with production with Infinite Undiscovery, which we talked about in the previous episode. And so, yeah, this was a Japanese studio that Microsoft was collaborating with back in the day because, well, let's be real, like, Microsoft doesn't really have a lot of Japanese studios. And, well, what earlier this year showcased that they don't give a shit anymore. But, like, this was their, like, attempt at, working in that sort of field. And yeah, no, like I would definitely say that this was a pretty decent attempt at them getting into the RPG, like the JRPG market. And I would recommend it if you like more of that sort of old school, or not really old school, but just more of an older feeling JRPG from the mid 2000s. I guess 2007 is more late 2000s, but you know what I mean. But anyways, let's get into the winner. So, the award for the best role-playing game of 2007 goes to Mass Effect. Yeah, Mass Effect, I'd say this is probably the correct choice out of this entire list. Not that those games Okay, voice mod all of a sudden just stopped working. What the hell? That is kind of cringe. What the fuck? I was in the middle of something. Actually rude. What the hell? Oh no. What the fuck? Hold on. Alright. Give me a second. I don't know where it ended, so... This whole part's gonna get cut out. I'm gonna make sure that in the re-upload that this gets cut out, by the way. I don't know what the hell is going on with yeah, I don't know what the hell is going on with voice mod. This is ridiculous. Voice mod. What the fuck? This is so lame. By the way, anyone who's joining in, I sincerely apologize. Voice mod just had like a bit of a problem. I don't know what the hell is going on. Hold on. Yeah, this is concerning me now. Because I paid for this. What the fuck? Why? Yeah, I don't know what's going on. This is so bizarre. Okay, let's try this again. Let's pull up voice mod and we'll see what happens there. If it doesn't work, then I'm gonna have to restart the stream, which is gonna piss me off. Because voice mod should get their shit together. I don't know what the hell is going on. God damn it. Now fucking people left because they... Okay. Is my soundboard at least intact? Yes, it is. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna redo the game announcement because I don't know when it cut off. So, okay, it's working now. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna redo the announcing of the game itself because, again, I don't know what the hell happened with voice mod. It just crashed. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen again. I don't know what happened. I sincerely apologize, ladies and... Hold on. Fucking hell. This stupid thing. So yeah, I sincerely apologize with whatever the hell happened. I genuinely don't know what happened. So great, now we're gonna have to redo this. So let me just compose myself. Okay. So yeah, here we go. Of course, there can only be one winner. So, the award for the best role-playing game of 2007 goes to Mass Effect. It should not surprise you that Mass Effect is on here. Again, nothing against the other games, because like they're very respectable in their own lanes, but I think this is probably the objective answer. I mean, this was, a pretty big deal when it first came out. I mean, first of all, this was a new IP launched by BioWare because they were originally known for working on a bunch of games that sort of came out beforehand, like, or games that were from IPs that were like, decades old. akin to, Baldur's Gate and Knights of the Old Republic, Dungeons and Dragons, and Star Wars, obviously. So this was basically their first true attempt at making a new IP, and I respect that. Especially since this was around the time when BioWare was actually good. And it wasn't just that; they also implemented a lot of cool, innovative stuff. Specifically, the dialogue wheel for making a lot of the choices that are in game, as well as the more open-ended level design that just were not really all that common with RPGs back then. Like, a lot of RPGs just kind of relied on more, like, if they were like 3D games, they didn't rely on like just full-on designated worlds akin to Ratchet and Clank. That's what Mass Effect did, is that it just kind of took an aspect like that from Ratchet and Clank and basically just made that into an RPG system. And I think that's pretty awesome. And honestly, another big deal about this game, and this was huge, is that this was one of the earliest representations of genuinely good representation for LGBTQ. That was just not a thing back in the day. Because, well, unfortunately, let's be real, even as late as the 2000s, and even, frankly, the early 2010s, and, well, shit, even nowadays, unfortunately, in some circles, let's be real here. Lots of homophobia. And so to have a game to portray that in a positive light, in a true positive light, was pretty awesome. And it also is complemented by its engaging gameplay and narrative sections, as well as the vast lore that they put into this universe, that it really does deserve, at least in my opinion, to basically win this entire thing. And so, yeah, no, I would definitely argue that this is definitely the best game for the RPG category. Now we get into the big category. So, this was a pretty good year for DS players, right? But let it be known, let the word be known, that if you were a shooter fan, 2007 is your holy year. So many first-person shooters came out this year that are highly respected. I couldn't even put them all on here. So it was a really, really tough choice to choose which games to put in this category. Not because of the problem that we had with some years where there were not that many options, but for the opposite reason. It's because there were too many options to choose. But I did ultimately end up choosing 6 for this particular category. But the Game Awards did have a category for this. Did they choose wisely? Okay. I'm just going to put this out right now. The orange box is a really damn good deal. It has all of the Half-Life 2 content, Portal, and Team Fortress 2 in it. But that doesn't mean it should win Best Shooter Game. That's cheating. Come on, that's cheating. Let's be real here. That's 5 games in one of which isn't even a shooter game, and one of them didn't even come out in 2004 or 2007. Excuse me, it came out in 2004, and those expansions were expansions. So, yeah, no, Orange Box. No. Some of the games on there, yes, I would nominate them, but not the entire packet. Again, that's cheating. That is cheating by definition. So, Either choose, like, just choose Team Fortress 2. There's no reason to do the entire box. So it's like, yeah, like, that's not fair. That's not fair. Come on. That's not fair. That's not fair! Like, how do you justify that? You can't. You just can't. But whatever. So, yeah, massive L on that one. Everything else, fair enough. And, funny enough, I just so happen to have playthroughs of all of these games, so check them out if you can. BioShock was also a massive deal back in 2007. This game was, in a lot of people's minds, to be one of the best shooter games of all time. Dare people say the best shooter game of all time. And while I don't necessarily agree to that extent, I do agree that this game is pretty damn good in its own right. Hell, funny enough, Goldie, our little doggo friend, he's been playing a lot. He's been, I don't want to say obsessed, but he's been like up there as far as talking about BioShock. Granted, as far as BioShock 1 is concerned, I'd say, yeah, this game is a pretty big deal. Is it like my favorite game of all time though? No, it has some problems, especially on its console ports. But I would still recommend it, especially for those who are interested in a more grim looking game, a bit more just, I don't want to say cynical, but definitely more that is heavily critical of, society and capitalism and, the idea, like, just sort of the Believe It to Beaver lifestyle of like the post World War II era. Like it's a massive criticism of just that sort of mentality. And I think it's pretty awesome in that regard. So, but yeah, definitely worthy of being a nod here. And well, Call of Duty 4 is as well. Funny enough, I've been seeing a lot of people just kind of rate this in like, because I think I've mentioned this a couple times before, but I guess I'm gonna restate it again. I don't regularly watch Call of Duty YouTubers, mainly just because they're sort of they have this sort of bro, boy attitude thing that I just can't particularly stand a lot of the time. That being said, like I do watch a lot of like Call of Duty Zombies YouTubers. One of the channels that I remember I used to watch a lot was a channel called Mr. T Lexify. And I still occasionally watch him. And he does a lot of reactions to people doing a bunch of tier lists, as well as a bunch of just rankings of Call of Duty, not just zombies, but just Call of Duty in general. And I've noticed in a lot of those like videos, a lot of people have started ranking Call of Duty 4 pretty low. And I understand why. It's because it's a bunch of people who, and I'm just going to keep it real here, who were born either, around when this game came out, or maybe even after, or maybe they're even like closer to like my age, but weren't old enough to play it themselves, or really had the basically cared about playing anything like pre Black Ops 2 to try to play this. I'm not shitting on Black Ops 2, by the way. I love Black Ops 2. But I'm just saying that, like, it's a younger crowd that I feel like who are just kind of lowering this. And I feel like that is just I think a lot of it comes from people who say that it's good, but there's games that did it better. And I feel like that is a bit of a bad faith argument, because Call of Duty 4 basically made the Call of Duties that we know today. And I do find it to be a game that still holds up in its own regard. Yeah, it doesn't have a cooperative mode like pretty much every other Call of Duty game that would have from like World of War onwards, but I do think that it has a pretty good campaign, although the PS3 version is kind of botched. If you guys remember me streaming this like 2.5 years ago, just a bit of a warning. And I do find the multiplayer to still be pretty fun. Yeah, it's more bare bones in comparison to modern Call of Duty games, but it still has enough for it to be engaging. Hell, I've prestiged on the PC version. Can't technically prestige, but I've had to, like, max rank multiple times. I've, like, max ranked on PC, like, multiple times. So it's like, there's still a lot of merit that is with Call of Duty 4. And I do find it to be a game that is enjoyable even to this day. So, because of, it's more, because of its, more, accessible, stuff, like, options that they added to this game in comparison to even Call of Duty 2, because this game was built off of the same engine as Call of Duty 2. As a matter of fact, you'll recognize a lot of the same stuff if you've played both games. And I do think that this game was pretty innovative as far as, player weapon customization, because that just wasn't really a thing up until this point. Sure, you had games where there were unlockable guns, like in the Battlefield games around this time. They had the ability to choose between guns, and a game like Rainbow Six may have had attachments, but this was the first, modern military shooter, at least as far as I'm concerned, that was up to this scale, that had those options, as well as, basically allowed you to be rewarded for being good at the game, hence the kill streak mechanic, which was the thing that made this game stand out in comparison to everything else that was around at the time. Rainbow Six was more known for its more realistic and tactical gameplay. Battlefield was more known for its open map design, and Counter-Strike was more known for its sort of, also, I guess, tactical elements, but more in a multiplayer PvP side of things. And Ghost Recon was doing third-person shooting at the time. And so Call of Duty 4, I do feel like, as far as modern military shooters are concerned, and yes, Arma was also a tactical shooter. Trust me, I'm pointing these games out just to showcase that I am aware of other military shooters that came out around that time. But anyways, Call of Duty 4, I think, it's a game that stood out because not only was it more accessible, but the innovations that it brought in really resonated with people. Whether you love it or despise it, you cannot deny how influential this game was. So it is worthy to be on here. But you know what else is also worthy to be on here? And it should not surprise you. Halo 3, baby. This fucking game. I don't think I need to say anything else. It's Halo 3. You guys know it. It was a big deal when it first came out. Hell, I remember around the game's launch when people were just waiting outside of GameStop. Granted, I was a kid back then, but I knew of Halo back then, and it's just funny just kind of looking back at that in hindsight. Obviously through the lens of a child, but just kind of seeing people just lined out outside of GameStops and Walmarts just in our town waiting to get this game. That's how big of a deal Halo 3 was. And truth be told, fair. If you guys remember my streams on Halo 3, you know exactly why it deserves to be on here. Now that being said, I think it was BioShock that won this. Oh no, Call of Duty 4 won. I mean, you can make a good case for honestly any of these three games. Not the orange box. Hell fucking no. That's not even a fair thing. So yeah, you can make a good case for either of those, for any of those three. But I'm gonna add to the conversation. I am gonna nominate 3 more games. I already mentioned Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2, which is a long-ass name, I know, the mid-2000s. I know 2007's 2000s, but similar culture. There were a lot of long just names for a bunch of stuff. It is an era that I do miss. Rest in peace. Yeah, that's right. It's right there, by the way, next to me. But anyways, Advanced Warfighter 2 was obviously the sequel to Advanced Warfighter, which came out a year prior. But this game basically just took a lot of the elements of the... And by the way, I am referring to the console version of this game. The PC version is a completely different beast. Hell, I'll even show you. Yeah, because I think I need to... Yeah, I think I need to explain this. So, yeah, there are two versions of this game. There's the Xbox 360/PS3 version, which is the one that I got here. And this is the version I'm talking about. And then we've got Advanced Warfighter 2 on PC. Yes, same exact box, but if you look in the back, this game is a third-person shooter, as you can see with that. And this is a first-person shooter, as you can see right there. Do not mistake these for being the same game. It's like with The Force Unleashed, where there was the 6th gen version and the 7th gen version. In this particular instance, I am referring to the PS3/Xbox 360 version. This version we've got right here. This version's awesome. Don't play this one. Or at least if you want to, like... This one's just hard to recommend. But anyways... Ghost Recon 2, or Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2, excuse my language, I find to be a pretty enjoyable experience. And, well, I can definitely see why people would consider it to be the best Ghost Recon game. Because it was still tactical enough to where it appealed to the tactical shooter crowd, but it was, casual enough that, like, anyone can pretty much pick up and enjoy it. Like, it basically, refined a lot of the stuff that the first Advanced Warfighter did, but modernized the control schemes a little bit more, made it easier to make commands, made the shooting a bit more like precise, and even added in a better terrorist hunt mode. And as far as shooter, a third-person shooter is concerned, this game is a lot of fun, and dare I'd say, yeah, I agree with people. It's definitely one of the better Ghost Recon games. Is it as good as the original, though? I'll let you decide on that. You are talking to someone who does like Ghost Recon Wildlands, though, and, well, truth be told, without this game, Wildlands wouldn't exist, but I'm getting ahead. Well, okay, I've already talked about Wildlands. Go watch the 2017 list. But anyways, so yeah, I do think that, like, this is a good game to give a nod to, but I'm also going to give a nod to a game that, well, probably got ignored by the Game Awards back then heavily, but I do find this game to be really goddamn good, and I do recommend you guys check it out. Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl. This game is so good. Okay, so basically think like Ukrainian Fallout, but with more of an emphasis on survival mixed with horror, and you can pretty much just basically think like Fallout New Vegas, but made 3 years prior, and like, set in Ukraine, and you can pretty much do whatever the hell you want. That's basically Shadow of Chernobyl. And I find it to be really damn fun. Like, again, apocalyptic games aren't particularly my thing, but this sort of like Slavic punk-ish sort of thing, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like a lot of games kind of have this look. Metro, Herat, games like that. Stalker is in that category. I like that sort of, apocalyptic Eastern European look and I just find it to be like a really cool aesthetic, and I also just really like the gameplay in this because again, it's more survival based. Yeah, the game doesn't necessarily look the greatest, especially when we're going to talk about this next game up here. It's like night and day, but I still would recommend it for those who really want a more immersive survival experience. Go check out Stalker if you guys can. So now, whereas Stalker admittedly does kind of look, even for whenever it came out, it did kind of look old. Looks like a game from like 2002 or 3, even though it came out in 2007. Let's talk about a game that looked like it was made in 2015 or 2016 that was released in 2007. Yeah, Crysis, the exact opposite of Stalker, but is still a genuinely really good game that I would recommend. It has its problems. There are some weird glitches on certain parts, although to be fair, Stalker does as well. But I would say, and I dare I say, Crysis is one of the most technologically impressive games that has ever been released. I mean, you guys know the meme. Can it run Crysis? Big meme back in the day. And I think, as far as like a game itself, even just besides the beautiful graphics and just the tech that is working with this game, I do still find it to be a game that is pretty enjoyable. A bit by the books, but it does the job enough. And I do find it to be a game that I would personally recommend if you guys are more into more science fiction military shooters. So, but yeah, this was a long enough talk. Let's get into the winner. You guys might be surprised with what I'm actually going to pick, because trust me, it's not going to be the pick that you think I'm going to choose. So that's how much I like this game. So let's, of course, get this, and let's choose the winner. So the award for the best shooter game of shooter game of 2007. It was a really tough call, by the way. Again, you honestly, any of those would be choices, and hell, I'll even say this. Maybe when I do my Redux stream of this entire series, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, maybe I'll regret this, but this is what I'm going to choose for now. So, as of this moment, on July 21st, 2024, the best shooter game of 2020 or 2007 goes to Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl. I told you it was going to be something. Again, this is probably going to be my most controversial pick. And that's fair. Because, again, any of those choices are fair enough choices. And you can make a really damn good case for any of them. But I'm going to choose the underdog game in this particular situation, as I do find this to be a really damn good game that got overlooked at the time, but I do think has held up tremendously in a lot of respects. Like, that, again, the concept alone just resonates with me way more than other franchises. And because, again, it's a bit more, alternate history-ish, basically set in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, but where it's pretty much locked down, and there's a bunch of factions that you have to either work with or fight against. It's pretty much your choice. But that open-ended level design I find to be so fun to mess around with. And just the unique mechanics that were brought into this game, funny enough, were brought into some other games that people probably recognize a bit more. Like the weapon degradation that people know in Far Cry 2. Let's just say that Stalker beat them to the punch by a year and a half. And I find that to be pretty cool. As well as some of the more, stuff about, dealing with radiation, especially in this area in Eastern Europe. And even though this game doesn't have too many multiple endings, it does have those multiple endings. And just again, that open-ended gameplay is something that like is a huge testament to the design of this game. And well, people are gonna give me shit, but hot take, I find this franchise to be better than Fallout. Like, you can hate me all you want, but you know it's true. At least Stalker has multiple games that people like. It's not a series where like people are arguing which is the best Fallout. I rest my case there. I'm probably gonna get a bunch of death threats, but if you're gonna give me that, then you're blocked. But anyways, this is my choice for now. I might change my mind, but I feel like this is the choice I'm gonna choose for best shooter game. But let's move on to the sim strategy genre. Not a category that was chosen in the original Game Awards, but is one that I'm going to have for you guys because I respect this category a lot. And this was a decent year for sim strategy games. I'm not going to pretend and say this was the best year, but I do think this was a pretty good year nonetheless. Case in point, we've got ourselves some RTS games on here, Supreme Commander and Command & Conquer 3 Tiberium Wars, both of which were pretty big deals for their time. Supreme Commander was a massive deal because of just its large scale. Like this was a huge scaled RTS game that honestly we haven't really seen like before, and we haven't seen since. Like, it was actually pretty impressive to find an RTS game like this. And, you know, you relying on your, I think they're called like a Mega Titan, which is the thing that you see on the cover of the game. That's the thing that you pretty much have to rely on defending, because if that thing gets destroyed, that's game over. But unlike something like like Command & Conquer 4, which tried to do something similar, it works in the benefit of this particular gameplay style. And I'm pretty sure you can also repair it if it does go down, so it's not like a loss, massive loss. But yeah, no, like I would definitely say that like because of its scale and because of some of the more unique mechanics in the RTS genre that this implemented, I definitely do think it is a good recommendation for you guys. And, well, Command & Conquer 3 Tiberium Wars is another game that I would highly recommend. This is, of course, the somewhat long-awaited sequel to Tiberium Sun from 1999, if I'm not mistaken. Which, yeah, like, fucking 8-year difference. But a continuation nonetheless that not only surprised a lot of people, but also was welcomed pretty much welcomed with open arms, and rightfully so because this game is pretty damn fun. This is definitely the type of RTS I am more interested in because I think I have learned, especially after playing Age of Mythology. I think it was last week or like 2 weeks ago, whatever. I think I like games that are a bit more on the macro scale as far as like managing as opposed to micro scale like management. What do I mean by that? Basically, I like the fact that you build up more troops over time rather than like relying on a small group of them for like, you know, individual battles. I like how like I like the fact that like if you do mess up in a battle, you can easily recover in a game like this. I think it helps just kind of make things a bit more balanced. It's the same reason why I like a game like Company of Heroes and 40K Dawn of War, at least in comparison to Red Alert 3, and you know, stuff like that. So I definitely do think that like Tiberium Wars, and also just the fact that like this game brought back the live action cutscenes better than ever. Hell, this game has Billy D. Williams of Star Wars fame in it, and well, Kane is as Kane can never be in this game. yeah, no, Command & Conquer 3 I do think is a well-respected RTS game that I would recommend to anyone who wants to get into the RTS genre. Which, speaking of, strategy, Europa Universalis 3, a grand strategy game. Obviously, this is the precursor to EU4. And again, the more we go into the 2000s and we bring up more and more of these Paradox games, I am putting up asterisks with them, mainly just because of their age, but also just how complex these games can be. Because again, old grand strategy games, they can be pretty tough to get into. Even compared to Hearts of Iron 4, EU4, Stellaris, where those can be pretty hard to get into. They have been streamlined enough where like people like me can get into them. But EU3, that's a bit of a ask. That being said, though, I do respect it for what it is, and because of that, I am gonna give it a nod. And of course, we've got Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, which is another game that kind of mixed genres, mixed RPG elements with turn-based strategy in this particular case. Funny enough, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have another like Fire Emblem, like a new original Fire Emblem game in like 5 years after this, which is kind of sad. But I would still say that like if you want more RPG elements in your turn-based strategy games, go check out Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, especially since, again, say it with me. Oh wait, no, this was a Wii game. Yeah, this was a Wii game. This was not a DS game. So, well, there you go. More an excuse to buy a Wii. There you go. And then last but not least, we've got ourselves a simulation game to wrap things up. Ace Combat 6, Fires of Liberation. An Xbox 360 exclusive that, of course, is in the continuation of the Ace Combat series. And it's pretty cool. I would definitely recommend it, though make sure you get it real quick before the Xbox 360 shuts down, because I have a feeling this game's price is going to jack up so goddamn high. That, again, I just got that game recently because of it. But yeah, if you like that more casual flight combat simulation style of gameplay, Ace Combat 6 is definitely going to be up your sleeve. Granted, it might be kind of a bit more sandwiched in between older and newer releases, but it's still a game that offers the typical gameplay you expect from the franchise. So, and of course, due to that, I can recommend it to pretty much anyone. But let's get the winner for this category out of the way. So, the award for the best sim strategy game of 2007 goes to Command & Conquer 3: Tiberium Wars. So, this game is pretty good. Of course, this was, like I said, the long-awaited sequel to the game that preceded it 8 years before. Return to the Tiberium universe, stronger than ever. It streamlined the gameplay to where it was more on that macro scale, which I personally appreciate because, I don't know, just building a bunch of like, individual troops and having to like move all of them separately, I just don't particularly like that gameplay, like that style of gameplay personally. I prefer if I'm, making a unit that it's going to have like multiple guys in it so that I can guarantee a bit more of, again, it's more that macro scale as you see right here. I like that sort of, I prefer that gameplay style when it comes to RTS games. Again, that's why I like games like Company of Heroes and Dawn of War 1. And, of course, a game like this, hell, we'll even throw in Halo Wars, or even Age of Empires 4 in comparison to some of the other RTS games that are more single character unit stuff. it just it's not like terrible. It's just I just feel like it always tends to drag on. And so I like that gameplay change. Also, I do like the fact that they, gave a lore reason to implement a new faction, the Skrin. So they are the alien faction of the game, because keep in mind, it's the Brotherhood of Nod, the Global Defense Initiative. Those are like the main two factions of the first two Tiberium Command and Conquer games. They introduced the Skrin in this, and I like their addition into this. It, of course, adds to the universe, but more importantly, it adds to the gameplay. By having them be more of like a cryptid alien sort of thing roaming around, I find it to be a bit more engaging whenever, it's not just two factions that are fighting each other. Granted, I kind of wish that there was one more faction, but I'm not going to complain, because at the end of the day, this is already a pretty fantastic game in its own right. And, well, as far as like the newer Command and Conquer games, obviously in air quotes, because, this game's 17 years old, I'd say this is definitely like the best of like that last era of Command and Conquer. Relic 3 is still good, but again, it's more micro, and I prefer macro. And, well, Command and Conquer 4 fucked with the formula just a bit too much. And so I feel like Tiberium Wars is definitely at least the best entry-level Command and Conquer game. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. So if you want to get into Command and Conquer, this is definitely your best bet. Alright, so sports, racing, and fighting. I'm not necessarily going to get into this category a bit too long. I'm going to try my best to try to get through this as much as I can. But rest assured, this year was a decent year as far as this category is concerned. Mostly racing, of course, but also skating games. So it should not surprise you that we've got Forza on here again. This time Forza Motorsport 2. I will admit, Forza Motorsport 3 definitely did improve on this, but if you like to experience a bit more of the earlier, formulative years of this particular franchise, Forza 2 is not a bad entry to get into. It's going to be more janky, especially since, it is on the lower, since it's, one of the earlier games. But even for a game that came out in 2007, still pretty decently early in the Xbox 360's life cycle. Yeah, no, this game is still also looks pretty decent as far as a racing game is concerned. Like, oh my god, it's insane. So, I definitely would recommend it in that aspect. Of course, Need for Speed, Pro Street also is going to be a bit of a nod. Definitely not my particular flavor of Need for Speed. I'm more into the games that are a bit more of the cop chase style of games. This is a bit more dirt racing, I guess. But it is still a worthy nod for Need for Speed as a whole. And I can definitely see a lot of people saying, like, thinking of this as like a bit of a, more of a cult classic within the Need for Speed franchise. So yeah. There's also a Burnout game that came out this year. Yeah, Burnout Dominator. Released on PlayStation 2 and the PSP, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I can definitely understand the appeal. Granted, is it as good as Burnout 3? No, but it's still a worthy entry into the Burnout series, especially if you are more into, the more destructible types of racing games. Because, yeah, that's definitely this type of game for sure. It's just more so just a game that just kind of, like, continued on, like, what was already established with Burnout. That's how I see Dominator. And then we've got ourselves the skateboarding games. Let's start with Skate. So Skate was a pretty big deal because this proved that Tony Hawk could actually have a competitor. Because, whereas Tony Hawk was a bit more arcadey as far as its skateboarding mechanics, Skate emphasized that it was more on the realism. Granted, that doesn't necessarily mean it's like an extremely realistic game. It still has some gamey elements to it, but it is a game that requires a lot more skill as far as getting yourself into it. Like, you're gonna have to learn how to do all the, all the flick tricks and the moving the joysticks, or the analog sticks, in particular ways that you may not be used to. But once you get to the hang of it, it is an extremely satisfactory game that you might find yourself enjoying. So I definitely do feel like that it makes sense to have this game as the nod. And then, I decided to also throw in Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, which, yes, this is also a game that is kind of seen as a lesser game in the series, but it is still a quality Tony Hawk game that you can definitely make a good case. Just came out in an awkward time because this was the last Tony Hawk game for a while. And it just kind of, again, this was kind of in that weird, awkward transitionary period between console generations. And yeah, let's just say that there were some issues that people were popping up, people just kind of had, especially since Tony Hawk was one of those franchises back in the day that was milked to death for sure. So people still love the mainline entry Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, or at least 1 through 4, and even the underground games, but I feel like American Wasteland and Proving Ground are a bit more looked over, and I don't think that's entirely fair. So go check it out if you guys haven't. But of course, there can only be one winner. I feel like you guys know what's going to win, but I'm still going to have the suspense because it's funny, and it's my show, so I can do whatever I want. But anyways, here we go. So, the award for the best sport/racing/fighting game of 2007, even though there's no fighting games, whatever, goes to Skate. I feel like this is the best choice for this year. It makes sense. Again, people were getting burnt out with Tony Hawk, and so they wanted another game that kind of filled that void that didn't have that name and had different controls. And this game delivered. It also helped that, again, this game was marketed towards a more realistic skateboarding experience, which it was able to bring. Again, it is a challenging game, and it is a game that is hard to master, but you will find that it is going to be a pretty rewarding experience if you do so. Again, you might have to get used to just kind of how this works, because, again, it looks kind of weird with what I'm trying to do, but, yeah, you're going to have to do, stuff like that a lot. Which, I mean, you might do some of that with Tony Hawk, but it's more simple button presses with Tony Hawk. But with Skate, you have to really make sure that you do things. Otherwise, you're gonna have some fails that are gonna make you cringe, but not in an uncomfortable way, but not in a bad uncomfortable, and just a ooh way. Trust me, I've said that a lot in a lot of the compilations I've been watching, because I've been watching some compilations of people just failing in Skate, or just all the Skate games, and it's that would suck. Trust me, some of the stuff I've seen on some of those old videos of people playing Skate back in the day, that would hurt in real life. Again, there's a reason why I never skateboarded in real life. I almost did, but I remember This is a funny story. I think it was funny enough around 2007, I think. I remember um me and I think it was my aunt, we were going into like a skateboarding ring. I think we were getting a skateboard for my cousin. I think for their birthday, if I'm not like again, this was 17 years ago, so I don't remember exact details. But yeah, I remember seeing all the guys, and this was an indoor one, by the way. This was an outdoor. Um, and I just remember seeing like people just using the skateboards, as well as some like some dirt bikes moving up and down. And well, you guys know me, I hate heights, and that made me scared. So yeah, I don't think I'd ever want to skate in real life personally. And well, games like the Skate trilogy definitely don't help in that case because again, God, some of the stuff that I've seen, it is funny, but it would hurt in real life. Dare I say you might get like major injuries with some of them. But it's a good game, and I would still recommend it regardless. Alright, best multiplayer game. So, of course, multiplayer gaming skyrocketed around this time, which, fair enough. Like, esports was starting to it was starting to be taken a bit more seriously around 2007. It still had a bit of a ways to go, but like I would definitely say that like this was around the time when people started to finally take online gaming a bit more, seriously. Granted, that didn't excuse Xbox Live parties being absolutely racist as fuck, but let's ignore that for now. But just sort of that, having that, interconnectivity of competing against other people online was definitely, I'd say by 2007, was mainstream. So, did the Game Awards recognize that back in the day? Yes and no. So, Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4, yeah, I would definitely say that those two make sense. I'd say those, as a matter of fact, I dare say those were the games that helped define multiplayer games at the time. How I remember back in the late 2000s, or well, not late 2000s, but like I remember watching videos from the late 2000s whenever I was in middle school, seeing a lot of people just kind of doing, Halo versus Call of Duty. And keep in mind, this was also like, no, that was a few years after, but like I remember a few years later, there was that guy who made that parody video where it was like not Battlefield, Halo versus Call of Duty, and it was so fucking stupid, but in a funny way. Like that was a legit thing. Like Call of Duty and Halo were competitors, despite the fact that like Call of Duty 4 was on Xbox 360. Like it wasn't Battlefield versus Call of Duty. It was Halo versus Call of Duty back in the day. So, but yeah, honestly, fair choices. Again, though, Orange Box is not a fair choice because that is 5 games. Okay, technically 3 with 2 expansions, and one of those games isn't even a multiplayer game. Actually, no, 2 of the only multiplayer game on there is TF2. So yeah, no, no. That being said, though, Rock Band, honestly, that is a surprising choice, but one that I don't actually entirely disagree with. Funny enough, it's not the rhythm game I would choose. But I can see why they chose it. The whole guitar rhythm game craze, or just the rhythm game craze, was really big back in the day. I mean, we got Guitar Hero back then, Rock Band, Just Dance came out a few years later. Like, it was a trend that was pretty big, but, well, was still a pretty cool trend. Which, well, speaking of, Halo 3 won, not surprising, but I ended up choosing another game, which I just realized I made another mistake. There you go. You can sit between those games. There you go. Yeah, I nominated Guitar Hero 3. So, I mean, funny enough, I have been giving Guitar Hero a lot of honorable mentions, but I haven't actually nominated it for something yet. And, well, part of the reason is because I just don't know what category to put it in. Because it's not an action adventure game. It's not an adventure game. You're just in one place. It doesn't really fit in the simulation category because you're not really simulating a guitar. Really, I mean, yes, you have these. Yes, I do. I have a official Guitar Hero thing. As a matter of fact, I remember when we got this because my cousin actually got this for their birthday back in 2008. So yeah, I just so happened to get my own guitar for myself, as well as my own copy of Guitar Hero 3, along with Guitar Heroes 1, 2, and World Tour for the PlayStation 2. Unfortunately, I do not have a PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 copy of the game, or even a Wii version, so I might need to track that down. Unfortunately, guitar controllers are expensive as fuck, which is annoying, because the only way for me to be able to use this is through an adapter that isn't even being sold anymore, and that makes me kind of sad, but that's a whole other rant. But you get the point. I didn't know, and hell, even as far as like, you know, simulating, like, so yeah, simulation, yeah, this is in the form of a guitar, but it's not simulating a guitar. Like, I have my guitar right there, right? My actual guitar. It is not the same as playing this. So it doesn't fit in the simulation. And, well, I didn't want to add it into the sports, racing, fighting category and, you know, put in, like, slash rhythm in there, because it's like, you know, like, it's just, I feel like that would just be too bloated of a category. So, unless if I end up, you know, doing a slash rhythm for the sim slash strategy slash rhythm category, like, would that work for you guys? Because if I'm gonna be honest, like, if I do end up doing that, then, like, if I'm gonna be honest, Guitar Hero 3 is gonna replace Command & Conquer 3 as far as that category is concerned. But you get my point, is, like, I didn't know where to put any of the Guitar Hero games. Because I would have nominated them, or at least a few of the ones that, like, I brought up. But, like, I just didn't know what category. But either way, I am going to nominate it as a multiplayer game because, well, let's just say that couch co-op as well as couch, you know, battle was really damn fun. Actually, funny enough, I've got a bit of a story about this. 2.5 months ago, my cousin, the same cousin who got Guitar Hero 3, actually visited us. Here. They don't live here anymore. But yeah, they ended up visiting us, and on the second to last day, we actually ended up playing Guitar Hero 3 together. Granted, we only have this and we have the PS2 regular controller. But that was a lot of fun. Like, dare I say, that was definitely some of the most fun I had in a while. And so yeah, like, as far as multiplayer is concerned, this game is still a lot of fun, even if it's just the PS2 version, you can still have a lot of fun in this. And, well, as a bit of a bonus, it should not surprise you that a lot of the music that I like now, funny enough, did come from Guitar Hero 3. Like, there's the elitists. There's the music elitists. I'm sorry, I was a goddamn child. Like, but yeah, no, this was like how I discovered bands like Weezer and Smashing Pumpkins and Slipknot and Rage Against the Machine and Census Fail. Like, this was the game that got me into a lot of those bands, funny enough. So it's like, I have a lot of respect for Guitar Hero 3, mostly just because of how it helped shape me as a person. Like, obviously, I knew of other bands before this game came out. Like, I knew of Fall Out Boy, I knew of Panic at the Disco, I knew of Green Day before this game came out. They aren't in the game, I'm just pointing out that, like, I knew of bands even before Guitar Hero was a thing. But thanks to my cousin, which again I appreciate. But I still hold a lot of respect for it because of what it brought for me personally. And because of that, I personally have to at least give it a nomination somewhere. So, that being said, though, it should not surprise you about any of these other games on here. Halo 3, Call of Duty 4, of course, Command & Conquer 3, love that game. But also, Team Fortress 2, a game that I remember I did a lot of videos on my old YouTube channel around the time when the Gunmetal update came out. And, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, no, Team Fortress 2, when it's not infested with bots, is still a pretty fun experience. It did add in like a leveling system later down the line, and there was even the Meteor Match update, which added in a KD ratio, which that was actually the worst idea ever. Do not bring that shit back, Valve. I swear to God. We don't want people worrying about KD in a game that didn't have KD to worry about anyways. Please. But yeah, no, TF2, it should not surprise you that I'm nominating this separately from the orange box, because this is the game that should be nominated for its fun, hero-based or class-based combat and its game modes that are still fun to this day. So, there you go. So, really good choices as far as games to nominate. Though, there can only be one winner. So, the award for the best multiplayer game of 2007 goes to Team Fortress 2. Yeah, it should not surprise you that Team Fortress 2 is still going to be on here, even though the game nowadays is very different than it was at launch. I still find the actual game itself to be pretty fun. Hell, there's actually a version of Team Fortress 2 that tries to replicate the original like feel of the game pre-metal, like gunmetal update in a mod called Team Fortress 2 Classic. Go look it up. It's if you want to go back to the old school feeling of TF2, granted you'd probably have to play with bots. I'd recommend you guys check that version out. Or with bots as in like, you can choose to turn them on and off, or off. But as far as a game is concerned, yeah, no, TF2 holds up in a lot of ways. It has a very, unique for its time class-based system, and it's debatable whether or not this is a hero shooter, because I know there's some people who don't like calling it a hero shooter, but I would argue that it technically is, because, well, yes, the names of the individual characters are more so based off their class. They are their own individual characters at the end of the day. And they were the inspiration for basically a bunch of other games that would come out in later years. In games like Brink and Overwatch and Lawbreakers and Battleborn and Concord and all these games that have come out in the past 17 years. Obviously some better than others, but the point is that this was a highly influential game that basically started the hero shooter concept. And even whether or not you agree with me on that, you cannot deny that this game also has very iconic maps and locations that even people who have never played Team Fortress 2 know of. Like, obviously, 2 Fort is not particularly a great map, but it is an iconic map regardless. Same thing with Well. Same thing with Double Cross. Granted, some of those maps are from later editions, but it still stands that those are pretty well-known locales that people know of. Also, this game heavily requires on teamwork, and that is something that you can't necessarily say with too many games that are not tactical shooters, because, well, a lot of tactical shooters, of course, require that teamwork, but a lot of more arcadey shooters are less reliant on it. This game relies on it, and I think that helps a lot when it comes to actually getting into the game. It also helps that this game has a ton of personality to it. It is a game that is on cartoon logic, but it knows that it is on cartoon logic, and thus pretty enjoyable to go through. And even despite the fact that the game is almost 20 years old, the community is still as strong as it ever was. It has declined as far as, player numbers, but there are still thousands of people who do try to play. There are still tons of people who try to play. And it is a cultural icon in the gaming landscape into this day. I just wish that Valve would actually fix the damn servers. Valve, please actually get rid of the bot problem. I'm someone who likes offline bots, but don't put them online. Granted, I know it wasn't Valve's problem. It was a bunch of asshole hackers that did that, but please actually have integrity, Valve. People are actually begging for you to fix that. It's sad. So, but even if that doesn't end up happening, then there's at least still, community and private servers that are still made. And like I said, there's the TF2 Classic mod that you can try out if you're interested. So, there's that. So, alright, next up. DLC and expansion. So, I'd say this is the first year where DLC was really thought of. Okay, well, I guess, not really. But technically DLC has been around since the late 90s, but I do feel like this is going to be the last year that I will use the DLC moniker. Cause yeah, DLC is more known for more modern stuff. But as far as expansions, 2007 had a lot of expansions to come out. Some for games that came out that year, while a bunch from games that came out in previous years. And of course, that is what we'll be ranking, is the latter. And yeah, this was a really damn good year for, new content as well. Again, 2007 was a goated year in general. So, what did I end up choosing? Well, I think the list speaks for itself. So, of course, we got ourselves World of Warcraft's Burning Crusade. This was the first expansion for the original version of World of Warcraft. Granted, not as a big deal as Wrath of the Lich King, but still a big deal nonetheless, and is still a highly remembered expansion for the game. And, obviously just kind of starting to get into some of the more serious aspects of World of Warcraft. Um, in adding in a bunch of new enchanted items, and new boss fights, a new locale. So yeah, like as far as sort of the continuation of World of Warcraft story, this was a pretty big deal. Also, we have a Sims 2 expansion on here. Keep in mind that Sims 2 expansions are going to probably appear for a little while, so do keep that in mind. But again, this was a pretty big Sims 2 back in the mid to late 2000s was still a pretty big deal. People forget just how much The Sims was everywhere. I remember on Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network so many ads for The Sims. It was insane. But anyways, Sims 2 Seasons was a somewhat warranted expansion. It did lead to a bad precedent, I will admit. But keep in mind that like this was the first time The Sims had seasons, because Sims 1 didn't have any seasons, and Sims 2, at least back in the day, they couldn't really code it in, and so they had to make a full-on expansion for that whenever they were able to do so. Obviously, nowadays, they use a seasons expansion as a lazy excuse to just sell you content that should be in the base game proper, but I'm going to give them a pass with this because it was more than just that. It added in a bunch of new items for each season as well. As well as I think they added in a few there was a few other things that it added. I don't have the expansion unfortunately, so I can't really comment too much on exactly what seasons added, but ultimately it was a pretty well respected expansion for bringing in more quality of life stuff and adding in a bunch of cool things. And then we got Elder Scrolls 4's Shivering Isles, excuse me. Again, another big deal back in the day. Basically added in a completely new area, which was pretty cool. And just kind of adding in a bit more of a cult storyline that you can pretty much play alongside the main quest line of Oblivion, and it can pretty much help you throughout that whole thing. So also, yeah, that is a creepy fucking cover right there. I don't like it, but still cool expansion regardless. Civilization 4 Beyond the Sword, yes, another Civilization expansion, although keep in mind Civilization 4 had a lot of goated stuff in it. And of course, this basically added in a lot more modern tech into its arsenal. A lot more like guns and even some mech related stuff, like sci-fi, which Civilization did before, but this was definitely Civ 4's look into the near and far future. And so if you wanted stuff like that in your your Civilization game, there you go. And then, of course, we've got ourselves Medieval 2 Total War Kingdoms, which, you guys know me. I love Medieval 2 Total War. It's one of my favorite strategy games ever. And so I'm a little bit biased with this, but the fact that this added in 4 new campaigns was pretty awesome. And just being able to mess around with the new units and just play around with some more detailed characters, or not characters, but more expanded unit rosters for several of the factions that were already in the base game, as well as adding in new factions, was definitely a nice treat to kind of have, for lack of a better term. And then, of course, Half-Life 2 Episode 2. Yes, I am counting this as an expansion. I know it's listed as a separate game, but let's be real here. It is an expansion to the Half-Life 2 story. Therefore, it is a expansion pack. So, and I will admit, episode 1, episode 1 didn't really add in too much stuff. But thankfully, episode 2 changed that. And that ending, oh my god. Even I wasn't expecting that ending. And I, yeah. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. Of course, you guys can play for yourselves. But goddamn, was this a... did that, sting a little bit. If only they made an episode 3 or Half-Life 3, but, Valve, again, is more focused on just, showing their own, service and just sitting on their fat stack of cash rather than, making new games. Yes, they are working on that new hero shooter game or whatever the hell it is, but come on, again, I'm not even the biggest Half-Life fan, but even I'm like, yeah, please give us a new game. Because, I think that... because I like the universe. I'm just not a big fan of the first... I've changed my mind on the first game, but whatever. I'm not getting into that whole fucking thing. Let's just choose the winner. Alright. So, here we go. So, the winner for the best DLC/expansion for 2007... goes to Total War Medieval 2 Kingdoms. I know a lot of people would choose Half-Life 2 Episode 2, which that's a fair choice, because that's a pretty big deal in its own right. But we're biased here at the Caspian Game Awards, and so because of that, this is going to be the one that will be chosen, but I don't care, because this game's awesome. It is annoying that I had to choose a cover that has all the logos and shit. Steam Grid Database, please make a cover that doesn't have that shit. Please, I don't like that. But anyways. So, this is a pretty awesome expansion for an already awesome game. Of course, it adds in the Americas, so you get to play as the Aztecs and the Mayans. Also the Apache, funny enough, as well as a few other... cultural groups from the area, like the Tlaxcalans, the Tlaxcalans, the Tarascans, the Chichimecs. You also get to play as the Spanish, but I'm gonna judge you if you try doing that. There's also the Britannia campaign, which is more focused on just kind of a lot of the conflicts on the British Isles involving the English, the Welsh, the Irish, and the Scottish, as well as a Norwegian expeditionary force. Then you've got the Crusades campaign, which focuses on the Third and Fourth Crusade, where you've got the kingdoms of Jerusalem and Antioch fighting against Egypt and a split Turkey. The Byzantines are there as well, and they deal with Venice. Mongols also invade. And then you have the Teutonic campaign, which is set in Central and Eastern Europe, where it's focused on the Teutonic Order fighting against the Lithuanian pagans there, who were also backed up by Novgorod is the faction that they use, which is basically Russia. And just kind of, doing the sort of pseudo origins of Poland, Lithuania, as well as the Kalmar Union, as well as Proto Prussia and Holy Roman Empire, stuff like that. But you get the point. It's historical stuff, but it's historical stuff that I find interesting because I like the medieval era. I like learning about it, even if medieval Europe proper stuff is kind of overrepresented. But anyways, it's a cool expansion that adds in that stuff, and like I said, with that list of new factions, that's pretty cool. And again, it also adds in some updated mechanics for each campaign. Like for example, the Warpath campaign, which yes, it's a reskin of the Jihad mechanic, but unique to the Apache tribe in the Americas campaign, I think is pretty cool. There's also the Civil War mechanic for England, where you have to deal with the Barons Alliance, and also the fact that if you play as Denmark and defeat Norway, you can create the Kalmar Union and stuff like that. And even just interesting, assassination challenges and just stuff like that that I find pretty cool as far as like all the campaigns are concerned. And it's also really fun to use a lot of the new units, such as the flamethrower guys for the Byzantines, or the what's another one? Oh yeah, the assassin guys for the for Egypt, or like the Irish, like yeah, all the stuff that like the Irish faction use. So there's some really cool things that they brought in that honestly I think definitely justifies. And of course, as a bonus, the expansion has a ton of mod support that I could not get into. Go check out my wiki if you want to look into it. But let's just say there's a ton of cool stuff that people have made. So, in my opinion, this is the best expansion. But you can have all the amount of content you want, but does that matter in the art direction department? Well, at least here, it does. So, obviously, this is not a thing that was at the Game Awards, or the original Game Awards, but I like to have anyways, because I do think it's a cool concept. So, as far as games that I've chosen, of course, we're going to be choosing games that I've talked about before. So it should not surprise you that these are the choices that I ended up having on here. Yeah, Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn for its Japanese anime look, of course. Super Paper Mario for its more cartoony, paper stencil, sort of in the name paper look. BioShock for its sort of steampunk question mark, I guess more inspired by 1920s cinema. It's definitely inspired by the 1920s and 30s stuff, like Metropolis. I don't remember the name of that sub thing of science fiction, but yeah, you get the point. Just kind of making an entire game just kind of look like that. And then of course TF2 for its comic book and cell shaded look that, for better or for worse, did inspire a lot of games a decade later to try to mimic its look, which is Guitar Hero 3 also for its more comic book and cell shaded look, but just a bit more in a different way. I guess TF2 is more inspired by 50s and 60s posters, whereas Guitar Hero 3 definitely inspired by comic books. And then, Crysis being I usually am not someone who likes praising a game's graphics, because at the end of the day, graphical fidelity should not be a determining factor, but Crysis is the exception to that rule because of just how damn impressive it is. So, but of course, there can only be one winner, as always. So let's choose it. So, the Best Art Direction Award for 2007 goes to Crysis. I know I don't like choosing a game for its graphical fidelity. It just feels cheap, and it promotes a very toxic mindset of graphics over gameplay. That being said, though, this is going to be the exception to that rule, because for 2007, this was a big deal. And even just sort of besides the graphical fidelity, I actually do like the fact that this game does do that mix of near future tech with the concept of the ancient aliens. And yeah, the alien designs I think look pretty cool in this game. Actually, funny enough, them along with the Skrin from the Command and Conquer 3, they actually look very similar. So, I don't know, maybe the same art team from EA designed the creatures for both of them. So, who knows. But I think they look pretty cool. And again, it should not... I don't think I need to like say this anymore. This game, for a game from 2007, looks amazing. There is a reason why there was the meme Cannon Run Crisis, because this game was so graphically intense that literally 90% of computers back in the day could not run Crisis. Like, it was that high in demand as far as, its fidelity. It was pretty much ahead of its time. So, and there's even a bunch of other things that are in that game, such as the fact that you can shoot down individual limbs in trees, very similar to Far Cry 2 a year later. Funny enough, same developers worked on Far Cry 1, but I'm getting ahead of myself. And the fact that they've been able to render beautiful jungle environments and make water that still looks good to this day. Again, it is one of the few examples where the graphics actually genuinely impress. And I have to give credit where credit is due. Like, again, 99% of the time, I would not choose a game like Crysis for this category. But this is the rare exception that I will. Because it is a genuinely impressive game as far as its tech. And again, even as far as its look, it does look, its art direction as far as its science fiction tones, I do think look pretty cool. So, it's not the worst choice to go for. So, alright, best narrative. So, I will admit, as we go further and further away from the modern day, there are going to be less and less games where a narrative will start to apply. We're not quite far away from being away from deep narratives. But do keep that in mind that it is going to be a bit harder for me to choose games with genuinely really good narratives. So yeah, if there's going to be games that we're going to have less and less choices, I'm just preparing you guys for that from this point onwards. So, but of course, as far as what I ended up choosing, these are the games I ended up having here. Of course, The Witcher for its introduction to Geralt and just him being, a Witcher. Ace Attorney, Apollo Justice for its sort of, mystery solving and crime casing stuff that Ace Attorney is very well known for. Yeah, Apollo may not be as iconic as as Phoenix Wright, but I still think that he is still, a worthy, successor to his name. And I think most people would agree. BioShock for its, narrative with Andrew Ryan and just kind of, basically being a massive critique on hyper capitalism and far extreme libertarianism, and just sort of basically telling the story through its actual world. Halo 3 for it being the epic conclusion to a trilogy that gets very emotional at parts, to say the least. And then Mass Effect for obviously establishing the Mass Effect storyline, getting General Shepard, and just sort of fleshing out a lot of its characters. So, if you guys have been noticing the pattern for this particular stream, you guys know exactly where I'm going to go with this. So, the award for the best narrative of 2007 goes to BioShock. Yeah, this makes sense, at least in my mind, that BioShock is, of course, going to be the game that is the winner. Because there's a reason why this game is highly revered. It's mostly for its narrative beats and the fact that it is a story about a fallen city that basically was the result of massive corruption and mass hysteria that ultimately wiped out an entire populace through their own hubris. It is the tragic tale of what happens whenever, capitalism in its most extreme form takes over an entire civilization. Like, whether you like it or not, that is what this game is about. So, and as someone who has been, obviously not into politics too much, but as someone who has described themselves as being someone who's pretty deep in the left, I would definitely say that, even though this is obviously an alternate timeline, this is definitely a game that I would say definitely showcases the dangers of what happens, in such a hyper-capitalist society. And yeah, it's unfortunately pretty relatable in the modern day. So, and even if you don't necessarily agree with themes, you cannot deny that, as far as just, as far as characters are concerned, Andrew Ryan is definitely someone who is intimidating, but also compelling at the same time because of just his ideals on what a society should be, and the fact that, he's just kind of this overarching threat that just kind of lingers throughout the entire game. And he even just kind of, torments you throughout the entire thing up until near the very end. Not to spoil anything, but let's just say that not everything is as they seem. So, and even just a lot of the other characters that you meet up with, and just sort of their, backgrounds and all that stuff, especially the stuff involving Sander Cohen. Oh my god, Sander Cohen is a fucking psychopath. God. So, yeah, and, of course that gets into the final point, the environmental storytelling. This game, in and of itself, is a story. The gameplay and the exploration is a story in and of itself. There are tons of little details that are scattered throughout the entire, city. Little bits of, information, text logs, audio logs, that really do tell the story of Rapture in pretty grim detail. And as far as I'm concerned, BioShock is definitely... You can argue whether or not BioShock can be considered art, but it was definitely, at least from what I can tell, the first game that basically started the conversation of, can video games be considered art? And because of its narrative, and also because of its, heavily inspired 1920s art direction, it definitely led credence to those ideas. And so I would definitely recommend you guys check it out on those footings. But is that enough for it to win Game of the Year? Well, we'll see. Because, this was, in fact, of course, a thing for the Game Awards. So did they end up choosing games that fit that? Orange Box should not be on here. All the other choices are fair. BioShock, Halo 3, Mass Effect. Fair choices. The Orange Box is not its own game. That is cheating. What is wrong with you? Anyways, BioShock won their Game Awards, which, for the reasons I just explained, that is absolutely fair. Granted, they probably, knowing the Spike Game Awards, they probably don't think of it in the same philosophical level that I just described, but whatever. It's still a good game. But let's fix these nominees. Yeah,
I fucking put these games on here. Portal? Yeah. I think it definitely deserves to be here for Game of the Year. For its pretty cool, puzzle and platform design. And honestly, just being a really fun experience in its own right. Tar Heel 3 Legends of Rock? Yeah, it was a trend at the time, but it means a lot to me personally. And, I definitely would argue that, like, even to this day, it's a pretty damn fun experience. And I don't think anyone's going to argue with me about Super Mario Galaxy. It makes sense for it to be Game of the Year nominee, or just Game of the Year material in general. This was a highly regarded game around the time, and, well, is still praised to this day. So, and of course, BioShock for its, narrative and, starting the conversation of our video games art. Mass Effect, of course. Starting the conversation. Oh, sorry, I'm just checking. Mass Effect, of course, being a pretty phenomenal RPG in its own right, and then Halo 3 being an amazing game as far as, shooters are concerned. So, let's end this tonight with the final award. Oh my god, this is gonna be a bit of a thing, but I do think that the game that I ended up choosing, most people are gonna agree with it. So, but anyways, here we go. The final award of the night. The final award of one of the best years for video games of all time. Let's finish this with a banger. So, the Game of the Year award, the award of Game of the Year for 2007 goes to Halo 3. It should not surprise a single goddamn person that Halo 3 is the winner of everything tonight. It is, in fact, one of the best games of all time, and it is a game that means a lot to me. But, of course, let's go over the reasons why. So, first of all, its single-player campaign. It is one of the best shooter campaigns ever. Like, it obviously continued off of Halo 2's campaign, which had its problems. Like, you can definitely clearly tell that it was not a finished campaign, and so, but they rectified it with this game as far as, sort of continuing and finishing off the story of fighting against the Covenant and dealing with the Flood invasion, and pretty much raising the stakes so high that, like, humanity is basically on its last legs as far as trying to survive. And there are many sacrifices that are made that may or may not get to you. And that is just the single player alone. The multiplayer is, as you see right there, it is a generation-defining multiplayer. Halo 3 has some of the most highly revered multiplayer experiences that anyone has ever had. And it is a pretty damn fun multiplayer. Granted, unfortunately, the original servers were shut down, and so that basically leaves playing Master Chief Collection, which, word of advice, do not do the normal search. Go into community servers for that. Otherwise, you will get tryhards, and it's the actual worst experience. But anyways, multiplayer is genuinely really fun. Granted, I never played official Halo 3 multiplayer too much. I played it like a handful of times, but the few times I do remember playing it, I thought it was still pretty fun. And of course, has tons of customization, as always. But also this game did have a innovative forge mode, which allowed you to pretty much move around items on pretty much any of the maps. And it even, like, with one of the later DLCs, even making it a completely blank map so that you can create your own map in it, which was insane. Like, no, like, you know, as far as like game customizers, that was a pretty big deal. And well, I would make an argument that I already said that, like, I'd say 2007 was whenever, like, you know, online multiplayer was basically mainstream. I would argue that this was the game that basically solidified it. It wasn't the game that I feel like was the catalyst for it. You can definitely make your cases on that. But this was definitely the game that I feel like was the game that made online gaming a staple from this point onwards. For better and for worse. But regardless, you cannot deny the influence of that. And, well, as far as, like, you know, the last game in the trilogy, this went off with a banger. And last but not least, you see it at the very bottom, but this was actually one of the few games that did honestly make me cry. That fucking ending, I swear to God. Holy shit. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's just say that this was definitely, like, if you guys remember me streaming this 2 years ago, yeah, let's just say I got very emotional at this. And keep in mind, whenever I first finished this, that was the same way. This is definitely a game where if I play through it again, I will probably cry. That is how damn emotional this game was for me. So, and I never, like, granted, I've cried a couple times now as far as some of the games that I've played. I even made a playlist of the streams where I've cried, but this is one of the 4 games that I've ever cried at. So, as far as I'm concerned, by its very nature, I had to give it a win. And I think that making it the game of the year of 2007 is the best place to put it. So, but of course, let's recap the awards. So, these are the awards we gave out. Best Action Adventure went to Assassin's Creed. Best Platform Game went to Super Mario Galaxy. Best RPG went to Mass Effect. Best Shooter Game went to Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. Best Sim Strategy went to Command & Conquer 3. Best Sports Racing Fighting went to Skate. Best Multiplayer went to Team Fortress 2. Best DLC Expansion went to Medieval 2 Total War Kingdoms. Best Art Direction went to Crysis. Best Narrative went to Bioshock. And of course, the Game of the Year went to Halo 3. As far as my personal top 10 favorites, these are at least my personal favorite games of 2007. Command & Conquer 3 Type of Game Wars, Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, Crysis, Team Fortress 2, Call of Duty 4, Assassin's Creed, Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock, Bioshock, Portal, and Halo 3. In no particular order, by the way. But, as I alluded to at the beginning of the stream, of course, we've got some honorable mentions, as well as some guilty pleasures that I want to at least give some attention to. One of which is going to annoy people being like, why is that not on here? Hear me out once we get to it. So, we've got all these games right here that honestly I had some enjoyment with. So, Medal of Honor Vanguard was a PlayStation 2/Wii exclusive that I thought was pretty cool. We also had Medal of Honor Airborne, which I played earlier this year, that I thought was somewhat fun as well. So yeah, this was them trying to push out Medal of Honor just a bit more. Penumbra Overture was a game that I streamed a few years ago that I had some issues with it, but I think I've kind of grown on. And yes, made by the same developers who would eventually make Amnesia, so a very important game in that regard. Tomb Raider Anniversary being a remake of the original Tomb Raider. I would have nominated it, but it is a remake, so I couldn't. Metroid Prime 3, Corruption, of course, being the last of the original Metroid Prime trilogy, until they announced Metroid Prime 4, of course, so that's pretty awesome. A more of a guilty pleasure, Enemy Territory Quake Wars. I know it's not a popular Quake game, but I like it because it feels more like a Battlefield game just set in the Quake universe, and I thought it was pretty fun, so I personally liked it. Siphon Filter Logan Shadow, the last Siphon Filter game that was made, that was released on PSP. Funny enough, this game had it had a PlayStation 2 port, but guess when that PS2 port came out? Take a guess. 2010. Yes, that does mean this was the last official PlayStation 2 game ever made for like an official Sony license. That is insane. So, but yeah, as far as, so yeah. And then of course we got Star Wars Battlefront, Renegade Squadron, which again, that is just more of a guilty pleasure of mine. It was a PSP exclusive that allowed for more customizable options for Star Wars Battlefront. I don't know, it was just kind of a cool excuse for me to play Battlefront on the go. Uncharted Drake's Fortune. I debated whether or not I wanted to actually nominate this, but man, I've been noticing a lot of people giving this game a lot of flack in more recent years. Fair enough. I don't think it's a terrible game. It is not, as far as first games and franchises, it is not the worst I've ever played. Trust me. It is no Far Cry 1. It is no Hitman Codename 47. It is not that bad. But I didn't know if I felt comfortable to nominate it. And so because of that, yeah. Actually, yeah, admittedly, that's probably another game that people are going to be very upset about me not giving it, a nod. But I just had to, in good faith, not. Because in comparison to Uncharted's 2 and 4, and even 3 in certain aspects, yeah. Unreal Tournament 2007, I think is pretty fun. It did get a lot of flack when it came out, and well, unfortunately, Epic Games loves to ignore Unreal nowadays, which is really sad. Rock Band obviously was a nominee for the actual Game Awards, but I replaced it with Guitar Hero 3, mostly because people accuse this game of ripping off this, the listing, the song list for Guitar Hero 3. It was a big controversy. But I still find it to be pretty fun and a good competitor, even if it didn't last as long as far as the cultural zeitgeist is around. Behind me, we've got Dynasty Warriors 6, because I actually really like Dynasty Warriors, funny enough. I feel like this was the last game that I feel like people confidently said was pretty good. So, and then last but not least, this is the game that I know for a fact people are going to be upset with me for not having. I had to give an honorable nod and not a nominee to Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga. I know it is a popular game and I even like it, but here's the thing you guys gotta remember. It is a re-release of 2 games. It is not a new game in its own. It is technically not a new game. It is a compilation of Lego Star Wars the video game and Lego Star Wars 2. It is not, by definition, it is not a new game. So, it is a re-release, which goes against the rules. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned...
What a shame.
As far as I'm concerned, I feel like slight spoilers for 2005 and 6. You may or may not see those as a nominee for that. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But for 2007, in good faith, I'm going to just give it an honorable mention. But, of course, you guys see, this game, this year, fucking goated as far as, like, just games in general. And I can guarantee you, there's even a bunch of games that I've even forgotten about that like, I haven't even listed on here. And you guys are more than welcome to mention in the comments in the thing. But, of course, that concludes the Caspian Awards for 2007. Again, I was so happy I was able to finally talk about such an amazing year. Like, again, going more so into my childhood, even deeper. But as far as gaming years are concerned, 2007 was a pretty peak year for gaming. And I'm pretty excited whenever we get to 2004 and 2005. 2006 is going to be a bit, at least from what I remember, it's going to be a bit weaker. Not as weak as 2008, but just kind of the same caliber. I'll still check to see if there's any games that I'm thinking of that I'm missing. Granted, I can definitely think of plenty of games from 2006 that I am going to be excited to talk about. But in comparison to 2005 and 2007, 2006 is going to be it's going to be a bit of a quiet year. So just be on the lookout for that. But regardless, I hope you guys did thoroughly enjoy this, because I had a lot of fun talking about this. And if you guys did enjoy, hearing this, and you guys want to support the channel, of course, hit that follow button down below and turn the bell icon. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell icon over there. And of course, if you guys can, make sure to check out links down below, specifically Discord, SoundCloud, and the Humble Bundle affiliation link. If you guys haven't already on Twitch, you can also hit the subscribe button to directly support me. If you can't necessarily do that, that's completely fine. I'm just glad that you guys took time to watch this. But regardless of all that, though, make sure to share the stream to other people as well, and continue to be awesome people. But of course, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good night, guys, and peace out.